I'm about to start painting the 3 sinks, which is the detail part of the painting, and this is kind of relaxing to do, but you have to hold your arms up though, because you can't touch the rim of the sink, so it's a little tricky like that. And I have actually pressed my shirt buttons into the rim, so I've got to be very careful at this point that I don't relax and just flop into it because it leaves a mark. Okay, well, we're going to paint these sinks with slips now and using paper stencils to mask out and speed things up a little bit. I have all my stencils cut, and basically I was waiting for the sink so I can touch it without leaving a fingerprint, but if I press hard it's still soft. So basically that tells me it's not leather hard, it's not soft, it's sort of in that in-between stage, because when I start putting new colors on top I want to make sure they dry fairly fast but don't sort of pull in instantly. It's got to be soft enough so it is bendable a little bit if you put pressure on. So cut my paper stencils, just place them down, make sure that the paper stencils are really stuck. You have to use you dip them in water first, and then you simply take a brush and you push with the heel of the brush a little bit from the center of the stencil, but not too hard because you'll rip it, and just rub it in. You want to see some brown slip created from the surface of the pot. Rub over the surface of the piece of the paper so that you know you've got it covered. If you can see any natural paper color, you know you haven't pressed hard enough. And it sort of disappears, see? But you want to make sure that that's on there. So I'm now going to place paper on this. I've got 3 sinks to decorate, and I'm going to make sure all 3 are slightly different. In actual fact, one of them may not have any houses on at all, it may just be boats. But I'll put that on stop motion so you can see all those. Okay, I have just airbrushed some yellow slip, blue slip and white slip in these 6 areas where I'm going to put some houses again. And I'm not quite sure which ones I put last time. Doesn't really matter because I can reverse them, turn them the other direction if it's the same one anyway. I'm going to use this little piece of paper in the shape of a house, dip it in water, wait for a count of 5 seconds, which is for this paper. Whatever paper you use may take longer to get soft. And as soon as it gets soft, it won't be expanding anymore, then I'll put it down. Because if you put it down when it's a bit dry, it keeps expanding and you'll get wrinkles. So at least 5 seconds, I would say, before you put it down. Okay, so this sink I had to do white and the colors in the same layer because the brown is underneath here, but this is half landscape and half seascape, so I'm basically putting stencils down over the white and also doing the houses in the same layer. And you can see there's a thickness of slip here. So I've got to be careful because the slip shouldn't be allowed to get really thick on the piece, otherwise you get the texture of the edges of the stencils, which actually some people don't like. I kind of like that because it's the technique, but And so I'm just rubbing them in. And there's the houses. So the slip, when it gets thick like this, it's a good idea just to wipe it out, because it will make it hard to find the stencils. The thickness of the slip is the worst, because you literally can't see the edges of the stencils once you've got it finished. Alright, so this one, the seascape part is done. We've got a lighthouse, you know, over the ships and the seagulls there, so I just have to work on the landscape area now, and I'm going to have to spray this, or I could paint in black for the actual roof line. Okay, this is the white sink, so nothing underneath this at all, just white slip on top of red clay, so there won't be any red showing through. And now I'm just dipping my boats and just put the lighthouse on. Now the boats go down, so you wait 5 seconds just so that they stretch, and then you place it down, and you can't make a mistake, because if you move it you'll mark the white slip, so it has to go down with confidence. So I'm just holding it till the paper feels like it's absorbed. And, you know, your paper may be different, but just make sure when you put it down it doesn't wrinkle. And then you place it and it simply rolls into the piece. Now we're putting some birds down. These are simple because they're so small. And they're so small that they get lost. So you have to know where you're putting them. So I follow a pattern. I put the sun between a lighthouse and a boat, and then I put the birds and alternate in between the boats. So I know exactly where to find one. Okay, I cheated because it's 4:30 already this afternoon, so I just used my paint stripping heat gun to dry out the clay in the center a little bit, so it's starting to go matte. I probably could have done it a little bit more, but it's turning matte now, so I should be able to put the whales in there, because I still have to spray. This one is that's just the background color, but on the other pieces I've still got to do the trees yet, as well as the roofs. So I'm going to use these little paper whales, dip them in there, wait 5 seconds, make sure there's no running water on it, and then I'm just going to put them in. Now I need to know where they are once again, so I on the brown layer I actually counted how many pieces were down on that layer, so I know how many to remove when I'm stencil removing. And so on the boats and the everything. I know I've got a seagull in between every boat, so I don't need to count those because I know I've spaced them fairly equally. And the whales, I'm just going to do the same type of thing, so it's more of a very orderly pattern, so I won't leave one on, because if you leave one paper stencil on a piece and it fires in the kiln, your piece will be ruined, because when you take the piece out in the kiln, you will see cracks and stuff over the surface where the actual stencil is. If you're lucky, sometimes you don't. But you will actually be able to remove it with a sharp object that you can chisel into that area and remove the bits of paper, but it leaves a really rough edge. So see, I'm just overlapping them just a touch so I know where the next one will be. Looking for wrinkles in case I'm not letting it absorb properly. I need to know. Okay, this is the one that's half seascape and half landscape. So now I just have to locate which house I've got to find the roof to cover there. Let's put this light over there a bit more. So this is the roof. It's hard to do this so I can see it. Let's put the light down. I've actually had my angle poise light fall on the piece occasionally, so I've got to be very careful. So I have to line up with the house that's underneath. So I dip my finger in water just to get it wet. And then the next one, I think, is this one. So another roof here. Okay, I just changed my water for some fresh water. So now this one is an unusual one because it's landscape all the way around, but it's an island. So basically there will be boats sailing around the island, but they will be the small ones. I have to be careful because I still have to put the roofs of the houses. So I don't want these to overlap the roofs of the houses. So they have to be high enough up so that they don't look out of proportion, first of all. But they won't be touching the roof lines. They can go behind the trees, if I can get it high enough there. So all of these have to have detail painted in, which you'll see later in the video. Maybe this will have to be a two-part video. Okay, here we go with the One I just put the boats on, I sprayed the black, so I'm going to put a few. Did I do black cows on this one yet? No, I didn't. So let's have a few black cows on this one. I don't usually work on 3 like this at the same time, but because this is an order, I'm trying to make it so they're a set without being the same. Because I don't think they'll go in the same bathrooms. So we'll have some black cows again in a different place to the other black cows. Alright, and I'll probably paint some sheep potentially in different places on these as well. So now we got to go to the roof line. Okay, so what do we have first? That one. Remember the 5-second rule. Hold it just for a few seconds till it actually soaks in the paper and place it down. But I will not have to spray it above there because there are boats. And if I can do a stencil here with a tree, but I wouldn't be able to put it where the boat is, otherwise the boat would look like it's floating in the air. That will become apparent later on. So I've got to be very careful with the next layer. I cheated again. I just used my heat gun. It's an electric one, remember, so it doesn't leave any residue in the slip. So it was able to dry this out a little faster, maybe, just doing 2-3 minutes with a heat gun, making sure I don't burn anything and dry anything out too fast. But now I need to put the trees on, and this is the one where you've got, if you can see, I've got the light shining as close as I can to this. You can probably see the edges of the stencils. I have to put a tree. I'm going to use a tall tree where I have a house and then a boat either side going up, and then I'm going to do shorter hedges and trees around. So I'll show you my stencil layout in a few minutes after I finish these, and you'll see that I'm surrounded by stencils. So I cut stencils with an X-Acto knife or a scroll saw, depending on how simple it is. If it's a tough one, I'll use an X-Acto knife. If it's a simple shape, you can use a scroll saw. There's my big trees. So right here where there's a house, see if I can get 2 in here. No, I think I'm just going to get the 1. I'm going to place it down. There's my 5-second rule. See how the water dribbles down? I make sure I get all that up. I'm just thinking I can only get 1 in each of these places in between, but that might make a nice pattern. So this is the one where I just have the seascape on one side and the landscape on the other side, and I just put all the trees on this one as well, just like I did on the other big one. Okay, just to give you an idea of what my stencil situation is when I'm working, I've got pages and pages of themed stencils, and here there's another little pile of different things. So I've got 10, 12 layers there, and I just I have a lot of stencils, but it takes a lot of time to cut these guys. The sinks are all sprayed, and I'm not sure if you can see the stencils that are underneath there. As the light travels over them, you might be able to catch the edges. So they are still visible at the moment, and it's really hard to actually find them at this point. You can just about see them, but once I do the painting over this, it becomes almost impossible. So that's why I say you need to know what you have in a sink in order to actually find those stencils. So I do myself a little logical memory take on this, and just note that what I did, and I can count the whales. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 whales in there. So I can write it down if you don't have a good memory. But and then the boats are easy there. Each one is right next to each other with the birds in between, and the sun is right. Let's see, where's the lighthouse? The sun is right next to the lighthouse. So it's good to record all that, because this gets tricky at this point. Set out for I've got several blues, a green, a sort of lilac, and a white. So all my colors are there that I'm going to be painting with for the actual sky and the seascape. And my style of painting is figurative but stylized to a certain degree. And move that over a bit. So my brushes are Chinese brushes, and I'm simply trying to give my expressive qualities a little bit. And what a nice thing, just as I don't usually do this, but I'll do it for you guys, is that you can indicate where is the actual, that won't matter. I'm giving myself a horizon line. Now I'm just going to rub that out a bit, because I can correct that in a minute. That's my horizon line. So the sky above and the sea below. So I'm doing some expressive mark making painting wise. And then I've got a fan brush, which I can dip into the white if I need to, but I'm just going to give myself some marking of the brush strokes of the fan brush, basically. So I'm dragging the white across the other areas, which are slightly drying at this point. going to do the ocean. Let's see if I can do this so you can see it easily. It's hard because I don't want to get drips, but I'm loading the brush up really hard, thick, so I'm going to naturally get some. I just have to catch them and wash them away. And then I get my fan brush, and this bit makes the magic happen. And then your shoulders are going to get tired at this point, because I have to hold this brush at this height. I'm not wiggling it much at the moment, but I'm giving it a little wave action. It look really good. Okay, so I have a horizon line, so I know everything above that will be the birds, and then beneath that is the where the lighthouse will be sitting, plus all the boats will be in this area down here, and the whales in there. And I can now paint some clouds if I want to. Probably it's a point where I can do it. And they're kind of stylized clouds anyway, just kind of give myself a little line there. Okay, I've got 4 different colors of green, and I'm just going to wash with a paintbrush gently over the actual piece. No specific intention of movement or anything, just to give it some interest. Wipe the brush clean. This brush is an old brush. This is a new version of it, but I like the old one better, which is worn out a little bit. Now I'm going to move to the second green. Some of the strokes are going up, some are going down, some are going horizontal. Wipe the brush clean, move to the next to lightest. Wipe it clean, go to the light color. And that gives it interest, rather than being a flat color, which is very cartoony. I'm doing the same to the other sink, where it's round landscape all in the center, and now I just let them sit overnight, and tomorrow I will start, if they're dry enough. I can't do it until the rim is actually dry enough, so I don't mark it. I've actually been leaning over these and had a button imprint from my shirt, which is why it's better to wear t-shirts. But anyway, let them sit again now for at least 24 hours, maybe longer. So the first thing I do, I think I did this on one of the other ones earlier as well, is I paint some clouds. So I've got a flat fan brush that I touch there, and then for the volume of the cloud I just use a fatter paintbrush. I showed you earlier in the video how easy it was to see the stencils. Well, guess what now? They are very hard to see, but I had a plan. Maybe I should run for a political office if I have a plan. But anyway, here you go. It's basically hook under the paper. I'm being very careful so that you don't actually drop it, because I've allowed it to firm up, but it is still tacky, so dropping one would be bad. And then you just lift the stencils out. Hope you can see this. So I can take, if I can see a tree, I can lift it up. Let's do it so you can see. Well, this paper is still quite wet. Now, the longer you leave the stencils on, the more wet they will stay for the longer period of time. So that means they're starting to degrade a little bit. So you can actually end up having to peel it off in tiny little pieces. So you don't want to let the paper sit any longer. This is the third day after doing the paper stencils. There's another one. Could be an apple tree, I suppose I could make it into that. And that's all the green trees taken off. The next thing I have to do is take the roof, which shows me where the buildings are. The lighthouse will be next to that. So I've got to paint the windows in, and if I can remember where the windows are. And I don't have to be careful. And I can paint them in afterwards if I make a mistake anyway. But I don't want to go over the edge of the actual house. I should have the examples of them right here, because that would show me where the windows are. Let me get that. Okay, one of the things I do to help with the avoiding stress in the drying of the sink is to trim off a lot of the underside of the sink. Because this has actually been drying without being cut through for a while now. The weight of it would potentially just rejoin this. So what I do is I trim out and then I'll cut through it. This is why I have these big trimming tools. I hardly ever use these. Don't put too much pressure on. It's just sitting on top of a chuck. And this will help in the even drying of the piece because it's still so thick down there. And now I cut through it. That's why these hops are really good. Because it doesn't leave almost anything left on the actual bat itself. This wire is getting a bit loose, so I may have to put a new one on. And now I'm going to flip it upside down and paint the rest of this blue all the way down. Okay, I have a rubber bat that I actually made purposefully for flipping platters and large sinks. It's just a wooden bat that I place over on top of my sink, and then I flip it upside down. So now I'm just painting the outside of the sink the blue. I sprayed it in the upper part. I'm just going to use a big brush here. And there we have it, blue on the outside too. Well, my arms are aching. Surprising to me was when I was flipping them over, I'm almost not able to do that anymore. I mean, I'm 69 next birthday, and it's 25 pounds, and I'm just thinking like, okay, that movement used to be able to do it pretty easy. But anyway, that's par for the course. But I've got a lot of detail painting to put on these tomorrow. I'll paint some, the boats in the windows and put some sheep in there. Maybe even some apples on the apple trees. But all three, the majority of the work is done now. It's just icing on the cake at the rest of it. But so now the actual coastline, I just dab with a little bit of yellow on a sponge. So there you go, just to create that kind of little livened edge between the two. And then using my fan brush, I will put some waves. Okay, and then just to give it a little, I like the sheep in there because they add a little brightness to it. And there's a guy here who raises sheep on Ironbound Island. And there's a house on the island. It's just one house on this whole island. But I feel like when I had the sheep, it always, maybe it's my heritage growing up in Yorkshire in England. So I'll put some faces and some legs on them when they get a bit drier. Getting close to finished. And I could put some white areas on the cows, but I've always felt like they don't. There are black cows, there are brown cows, and there are black and white cows, and black, brown, and white cows. There's only so much you can do, but we've got some cows in there. And I hope you enjoyed the video. This was like a trilogy practically. Alright, thank you very much for watching my long-winded videos. Alright, take care, enjoy the rest of the summer.